20 years, it's been the go-to information source for any self-respecting cinephile. You can find out anything from who directed Wes Craven's New Nightmare to how many Oscars Transformers Revenge of the Fallen won, and their top 250 brings together the undisputed best movies ever. But whatever you do, don't trust their user-voted ratings. It's a mess. So many people have voted in so many different ways that the number in that star is so skewed that it normally takes a complex list of graphs and charts to decode, and even then it's hard to take seriously. Normally this means a film can score much, much higher than it ever should, but sometimes it goes the other way. I'm Alex from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 criminally low IMDb movie ratings you won't believe. Disclaimer, at the time of recording, scoring a movie lower than it should be on IMDb is not really a crime. Enjoy movie responsibly.
Number 10, Captain America, The First Avenger.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe is great, but it's not without its misfires. Iron Man 2 is flat out bad, and aside from Loki, Thor the Dark World is painfully uninteresting. But what's the film that's lowest rated on IMDb? Well, it's The Incredible Hulk, but that kind of deserves it because you probably forgot that it was even in the MCU. But what's second? Captain America, The First Avenger. Wait, what? The First Avenger showed us Cap isn't just the tacky patriot everyone dismissed him as, and has a heartbreaking final reveal that gives the usually bland romance subplot, shout out to Jane Foster, real weight. It's a great period comic book movie and also a cracking homage to Spielberg that actually makes Indiana Jones part of the world. Sitting on a 6.9 though makes it look like a dud, and definitely not the best film of the pre-Avengers pack that it is. Sorry Tony, Steve's my friend.
So was I.
Number 9, Kill List.
It's hardly surprising that Kill List doesn't score all that highly on IMDb. Ben Wheatley's second movie is one of the most divisive films of recent years. A low-key gangster drama that's oppressively creepy in the first two-thirds and then goes back insane in the final act. You either find a darkly brilliant horror or a misguidedly disgusting drama with little wiggle room in between. If a film splits an audience, all it can really hope for is a rating like Kill List 6.3. Every scoring of 10 out of 10 will be offset by those so enraged by its pitch-black ending proclaiming, "I'd give it 0 if I could." But while that rationalises why such a great film sits so low, it doesn't really excuse it. This is incredible, affronting filmmaking. Check it out.
Number 8, Jackie Brown.
Contrary to popular belief, Quentin Tarantino's a lovely chap. I should know. Also contrary to popular belief, Jackie Brown is one of his best films. Made straight after Pulp Fiction, it's a very different beast, with a mostly linear narrative focusing on a tight set of characters, but the director's unreplicable dialogue and homaging cinematography is still present and correct. And, in adapting someone else's work, there's a restraint that some of his weaker films really lack. Unfortunately, because its box office and initial critical reception was a step down from the overwhelming praise of his earlier films, it's still viewed as a disappointment. QT went back to straight genre riffs for the next decade, and on IMDb it's his lowest scoring film, aside from Death Proof, but nobody likes to remember Death Proof. Don't worry though, Quentin, I still love you.
Number 7, Black Sheep.
Those are farm animals that bolt the moment a human comes near. Yeah, that's up there with snowmen and fruit vegetables as horror threats you just can't take seriously. But that's kind of the point of Black Sheep. It knows it's ridiculous and fully embraces that, playing up the B-movie cliches and packing the film with sheep-shagging jokes. But what makes it so good is that it also embraces being a horror too. There's genuinely impressive gore and impeccable creature design with deformed sheep embryos and human sheep mutations. It's got the lowest IMDb score on this list, and it's typically best praised as so bad it's good. But how can a film with this scene not be in on the joke?
Never went for my gumboot.
Who's driving?
Number 6, The Master.
Paul Thomas Anderson may be one of the most beloved filmmakers in snooty critic circles, but when you get to the democratization of IMDb, it can be a bit of a different story. Perhaps his biggest casualty is the 4th best film of the decade so far, The Master, which sits at only 7.1 and his choice review quotes as, "I've never seen the Twilight films, but I'd rather sit through that trilogy than have to suffer one more second of this pretentious filth." Okay, yeah, it's an incredibly slow burner with a subtle payoff even by Anderson standards. Instead of Daniel Day-Lewis growling, "Milkshake," you get Amy Adams standing up. But the showdown between Joaquin Phoenix's World War II vet and Philip Seymour Hoffman's L. Ron Hubbard avatar challenges societal power figures and the broader role of masculinity with such confidence it's impossible to not be taken in by it. Okay, it's a pretty heavy one actually, but still great.
Number 5, Predators.
Predator 1, great. Predator 2, not so great. Alien vs Predator, bad. AVP Requiem, what are you doing? Yeah, it's not hard to see why people didn't really expect much from Predators. Despite being a fun film that gave fans of the Arnie classic just about everything you want, jungle setting, nods to Dutch, a heavy covered in mud, along with plenty you didn't realise you did, Adrian Brody as an action hero, a samurai fighting a predator, Danny Trejo, Predators performed rather ignominiously, doing adequate at the box office, receiving mixed reviews from critics, and, worst of all, scoring only 6.4 on IMDb. It's not an instant classic or anything, but gets the franchise much better than any other film, and certainly doesn't deserve to sit only 2 points above the first sequel.
Number 4, Magical Mystery Tour.
Okay, so technically Magical Mystery Tour is a made-for-TV special, but seeing as it's had a couple of limited theatrical releases in the decade since its initial Boxing Day 1967 airing, and more importantly has its own IMDb page, it counts. The film's loosely about the vacationers on the titular coach trip, although that really only serves as an in to a collection of Beatles songs, most prominently the titular number and I Am the Walrus. If you're one of the 2 people alive who aren't Beatles fans, maybe it's not for you. But for everyone else, it's about as accurate a representation of the band circa 1967 as you'll find. Unfortunately, even though the Beatles movies are pretty well regarded, because this one had such a poor reaction to its first screening, Probably because it has little narrative cohesion and the psychedelic visuals don't really work in black and white, everyone just ignores it. Paul even apologised, but I don't see anything worth apologising for here. Goo goo gajoob.
Number 3, you're next.
Depending on who you're asking, Adam Wingard is either one of the most promising emergent filmmakers with an eye for gleeful pastiche, or a lazy purveyor of faux stylish cliches. Now, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but there's a distinct feeling that those in the latter camp who got his movies 6.5 and 6.7 respectively on IMDb are wrong.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
You're almost meant to think Your Next is another generic home invasion thriller. The trailer is by the numbers, although it does have a great use of Lou Reed's Perfect Day, and for the first 20 minutes it follows all the genre tropes unashamedly. But once the killing kicks off, it becomes immediately apparent this isn't just some lazy slasher, but a relentlessly inventive play with convention. Just look at that blender scene.
Number 2, Killing Them Softly.
The big problem with Goodfellas is that it was so good, most mainstream American gangster films just follow the formula. Blow, Black Mass, American Hustle. Heck, even Scorsese couldn't resist it with Casino. So it's a massive shame when a movie that tried to present a new twist on the genre came along and was completely ignored. Killing Them Softly is the most underrated film of the past decade, a tense alternative to the typical gangster rise and fall that neatly juxtaposes all the artistically shot murder with a purposely on-the-nose political message. And it wound up with an IMDb score that puts it on a level with Spider-Man 3, Winter's Tale, and the RoboCop remake. Yeah.
Number 1, Bambi.
An 8.0 score is generally taken as the measure of a classic. And you know the first movie from Disney to get past that? Beauty and the Beast, the studio's 30th film. That's right, according to the world's biggest film reference, it took Disney 50 years to make an unquestionably great movie. Snow White? Nah. 101 Dalmatians? Nah. Fantasia? Nah. The Black Cauldron? No. Not even Bambi. Now, I love Bambi and could go on about it all day. And if we're talking underrated Disney movies, this is the top. It's not just a movie where the mum dies and everyone claims they cried at it. The whole thing is an amazing work of art with hand-painted forests, a gorgeous backdrop to a well-observed coming-of-age...